kids. Happy about that for the time being, but also we're going to kind of head right over to this little pathway here.
Yeah, so people, you can pan this around anytime you want and check all the things out, and it's up to you.
All right. Well, welcome to Deschutes Brewery. My name is Jack. So Deschutes Brewery started in June of 1988 by Gary Fish. Gary had a background in restaurants in California, and he came and visited Bend, fell in love with it. 2 months later, moved up here to start a brew pub. He had been looking in Northern California for a spot to start up, but found Bend and was super stoked on it. At the time, Bend was just, in 1988, was just a small little lumber town, about 20,000 people. So he saw an opportunity to open up the brew pub in downtown Bend, where he wanted to basically bring people together over good beer and good food.
And then all the skiers show up and go, "Oh my God, it's a brewery!"
Yeah,
he's like,
absolutely.
"Where you guys come from? The mountain?"
Yeah. So something that's kind of cool is our downtown location is still there and it still brews beer. We're one of the few breweries in the country that still brews beer at our original location for how long we've been open. But he started on about a 10-barrel system out there. We're talking about barrels a good bit throughout this tour. A barrel is equivalent to 2 kegs of beer or 31 gallons of beer.
That's a lot of beer.
Yeah. So he started on a 10-barrel system down there. 5 years later, in 1993, he scaled up to a 50-barrel system, which we're going to go check out here in a moment.
Okay.
So we kind of like to joke about if he wanted to stay as a small-scale brewery, he did a pretty poor job at it. But yeah, growing 5 times in 5 years is definitely super impressive.
Microbrewery to macrobrewery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coors and Budweiser, watch out.
Yeah. But something kind of cool to note is we've got these huge
Look up, guys.
fermentation vessels. There's 10 of them, and they each can hold up to 1,300 barrels of beer, usually filled to about 1,000 barrels. Just kind of leave room for that fermentation. They've got glycol jackets around them to keep them temperature controlled. So in the super hot summers here in Bend, or in the cold winters, they can make sure that the temperature is right there at the perfect spot for fermentation.
Okay.
Then if you kind of look on this lower level here, this is our pilot brew house. We like to joke that this is a multi-million-dollar homebrew system, basically. It's a 2.5-barrel system, so smaller than what he started on in 1988.
Okay.
But basically, this is where brewers get to kind of hang out, try out new ingredients, new recipes. It's all pretty much one-off batches that we get to serve here in our tasting room. So if you ever see a pub exclusive on our tasting room tap list, that's where this came from. But basically, this is where they get to try new things out. If something is really starting to do well, we'll scale it up a little bit. And then if it's starting to do even better, it has the potential to become packaged and distributed to different accounts.
Okay.
But it's on such a small system because, with a 50-barrel system, if you have an experimental batch of beer that goes wrong, you're not going to want to have to dump 50 barrels worth of beer.
Yeah, or 1,500.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. So, but another cool thing about Deschutes is it's still 100% or 90% owned by Gary Fish and his family, and then 10% owned by employees. So we like to refer to each other as co-owners rather than employees. Kind of helps bring,
Just call each other cuz.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, any questions on history of Deschutes?
Well, I know a lot of the history about Deschutes. I actually originally, when I first came to Bend back in 1989, I misread this sign and I was thinking it said 1888. So I was like, oh my God, it's a 100-year-old brewery. Awesome. But yeah, so you're a fairly new brewery. You guys make a lot of great foods. It's like all custom made and just phenomenal. But when did this actual macro brewery actually open up?
So this facility, we like to call it kind of a Frankenstein of breweries because we started in 1993 with that expansion over here. And then over the years, we've kind of slowly added on to it. So as we kind of go through the tour, we'll go to different sections. And I'll point out along the way where you can see kind of old framework from the old part of the building where we've now expanded onto.
Okay.
1993 was the first part of the expansion. Then 2004 was another really big expansion. And then I believe 2017 was another big expansion, but I could be wrong on that year. We'll find out once we get back to the tasting room and check in with Jeff.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll go ahead and head on to the next section.
Head on out.
So the three beers that Deschutes first brewed back in 1988 were Cascade Golden Ale, Bachelor Bitter, and Black Butte Porter.
Oh, Bachelor Bitter, that's the one I really love.
Yeah, so Bachelor Bitter can still be found down at the downtown pub on occasion.
They just need to make that gluten-free now.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you guys can make every one of your beers like a gluten-free version for me and for all the other people.
Right, that'd be awesome. So this is an active production facility, so...
Oh, the smell is amazing,
So
though.
if we see
out
any
here.
brewers or employees trying to get through the hallways or get to where they need to be, we're just going to try and make some room for them. And then if you see these yellow lines, if we can just stay in between those yellow lines.
So if you look to the left, people, there's a gigantic vat there.
Alright. So, here we've got that 50-barrel system we were talking about. It's called JV. It's called JV because we got it from JV Northwest up in Canada.
Oh, I thought you said junior varsity.
So that's the name of the company that we got it from. Something kind of cool here is it's actually, it used to be a gravity fed system. So you can't see it now, but there's 2 floors above and 1 floor below. So you can kind of see that spiral staircase. Brewers are having to go up, pour the grain down, and use the gravity to kind of get that entire system
Okay.
going.
So this vat actually goes down a floor?
Yeah, so there's a floor underneath. With
That's a big vat of beer.
And then 2 more floors above with different tanks and different vessels.
Okay, that's huge.
Yeah, so it has been updated a little bit, so it's a bit more automated, so brewers aren't having to do quite as much work, which is nice.
Okay.
But this is still in use. It's mainly for our darker beers outside of Black Butte Porter, so stuff like Obsidian Stout, and then a lot of our Reserve series, Abyss, Dissident, stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, it still is in use, as we can see right here. But awesome. All right, we're gonna move into some ingredients. Can you name the 4 ingredients in beer?
Let's see, wheat, malt, barley, and rye.
So those are all different types of grain that you can use.
And water.
So yeah, so water, and then we've got grain. There's 2 more.
Yeast.
Yeast, and then 1 more
Sugar.
sitting right here.
Oh, hops.
Hops, yeah, perfect.
The stuff that looks like marijuana.
Yeah, it actually is related to marijuana. It's insane, yeah.
As Red Foreman on 70s show go, you hopheads.
Yeah.
Which that's what they said in the 70s towards people because they couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with water. So we got all of our water from the Tumalo Reservoir. But since all the lava rock around, a lot of the minerals get filtered out.
Yeah.
We do want to add some of those minerals back in. So we have some stuff here. Rose gypsum or calcium sulfate is just one example of something that we'll add back into the water. I kind of like to describe it as if you think about back in the day, England was brewing like porters and pale ales. Germany was brewing like pilsners and lagers, and those are 2 different water profiles. And back in the day, they didn't have the technology to kind of, modify that water profile. So they were brewing beers that were really conducive for that water profile. So now, depending on whatever style of beer we're brewing, we're going to try and add back minerals to most closely replicate that water profile.
Okay.
Super interesting.
Nice.
But, yeah. Sweet. We can go and move into grain. So here we've got some examples of grain. This is all going to be malted barley, but like you said, you can use rye, you can use wheat, you can use oats. We made a King Crispy variant called Kanpai Crispy, which was a Japanese rice lager that we used rice flakes for. So there's definitely a lot of different grains you can use, and as you're also saying, it's going to be the sugar source for the beer. But most beers are going to be a pale malted barley as their kind of main grain that they're using.
Yeah.
But then you kind of have these other ones. So we've got crystal malt. That's going to be kind of getting into more of like a caramel toffee flavor. And then you got chocolate malt. That's going to be your Black Butte Porter. That's going to get into that dark, roasty, coffee, chocolate kind of flavor profile.
Okay.
And this all depends on how long it's kilned for. So if you think about like coffee, there's different levels of roast. Same thing with malted barley. The longer you roast it, the darker it's going to get. And that's going to give you different flavor profiles.
For a second, I thought that said Mandalorian malt.
Yeah, so these are some of the specialty malts that we'll get occasionally for specific beers, like Pilsner malt for King Crispy. But Yeah, we get all of our malt from Vancouver, or most of our malt from Vancouver, Washington.
Okay.
But yeah, to your point, you can use different types of malt, and this is going to be that sugar source that the yeast is going to eat. And the byproduct of that is going to be carbon dioxide and alcohol, which is what a lot of people are looking for in that nice.
I like how you guys are getting this stuff from the PNW.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so that'll get cracked open, expose some of the sugars, start to turn into starches, and then we'll kind of get into the brewing process in a couple steps here.
Oh, okay.
But we'll kind of go ahead and talk about yeast and leave hops for the end. So if you see these this dimpled tank right here, there's actually two more behind it. And so those are all going to be yeast propagators. So we've got 3 different strains of ale yeast in those.
Yeah.
So we brew primarily ales. King Crispy's a lager that we brew. We've got separate lager yeast that we'll use for that. The ale yeast is going to kind of give a more fruity, S-tier flavor profile.
Okay.
It's going to be top fermenting and ferments at a warmer temperature, whereas lager yeast is going to be bottom fermenting and ferments at a cooler temperature.
Okay.
But that's something we'll kind of get into a little bit later as well. So that's where we keep all of our yeast. It is alive in there, and those also have glycol jackets around to keep the temperature controlled, similar to those fermentation vessels we saw earlier up on the roof.
Okay.
They're dimpled just for surface area, and it makes it more efficient. Past that, that's all.
Sort of like a golf ball.
Yeah, exactly.
More aerodynamic.
Yeah. But yeah, just like a Titleist. Sweet. All right, we can go ahead and move into hops.
Okay.
So let's see what we have here today. We've got Citra, one of the big hops that we use a lot. So these are going to be whole cone hops. And something kind of cool is if you take it and you break it open, you can see kind of that yellow stuff inside. Those are going to be called lupulin glands. So each different hop has different kind of flavor profile, and it's all going to be coming from those lupulin glands. If you actually kind of rub them together, take a sniff, you're going to get a lot of those citrus notes, a lot of orange peel in there, and that's kind of what is going to give different hops different flavor profiles, is the oils in those lupulin glands.
Okay.
However, a lot of breweries nowadays are going to be using whole or pelletized hops. So this
they look like rabbit food.
Yeah, this is basically these whole cone hops, just super densely packed in. Just a little bit, less storage space is needed, less plant material left behind in the brewing process. However, we still use a lot of whole cone hops. We're actually the second largest consumer of whole cone hops.
Okay.
Any guesses on who might be number one? It's another craft brewery. Sierra Nevada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're the number 1 consumer of whole cone hops. But yeah, we're number 2 right behind them. And as you can see, these are a little dried out. We'll talk about that kind of in one of the next steps as well.
Okay.
Any questions on...
Would the hops actually work in mead?
Sorry?
Mead?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because I make mead.
Yeah, you could probably dry hop a mead and get some of those aromas out of there, but that's a really good question. We can definitely find out once we get back to the tasting and
okay.
chat about it, for sure.
Okay, so how long does it take once you actually get the wheat and all that stuff put into your vat? How long does it take to make beer?
So we'll kind of talk about the brewing process and then the fermentation process in a couple steps, but I like where your head's at.
Okay,
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, any other questions on JV ingredients or anything kind of?
I think we're kind of good on that one.
Sweet.
So if anybody wants to send questions, write them up. I'll gladly pass them on, and we'll talk about that later on. So,
sweet. All right.
You're the host.
Head into Shifties, so we can kind of gather around this table.
Gotta have a video game in the brewery. Oh, there you go. That's my game right there, foosball. I used to hustle people on that when I was a teenager.
Alright, so this is Shifties. As I said earlier, we like to refer to everyone as co-owners rather than employees. So this is kind of our co-owners lounge.
Okay.
Everyone's got their own mugs up here with their own name or nickname up there. So they're all numbered based on what employee you are. So in the bottom left there, number 1 is Gary Fish, the guy who started Deschutes. But we have all these mugs up here because, after you finish up a shift, you know, you might need to, hit the bathroom or something like that. So, fortunately, we've got this handy dandy bathroom right here. It's not actually a bathroom at all. It's going to be our co-owner tap room.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, you can come in after work, grab a shifty, hang out. But yeah, you can kind of see the list here. So, our Portland pub brews beer, so they'll bring beers down occasionally for us to try. This is a Boneyard beer. We are partnered with Boneyard now, so we'll get some of their stuff. This Irish stout was brewed at the pub downtown, so we'll get some of their stuff as well. But yeah, it's just a really nice way to kind of wind down at the end of the day. Another thing I really...
And I see you guys got Jube in there,
yeah,
Jubile Ale.
Jubile Ale on there.
Now, do you guys make Jubile Ale year-round now, or is it just still once a year?
It's still just once a year,
okay.
Yeah.
So if you guys find that in your stores, buy as much as you can. Because it's only around one time a year, and that's around Christmas.
Yeah.
So good.
But yeah, one thing I kind of like about Shifty's is it's a place where, there's all kinds of different departments across the shoots, and you can come here after work, and you're talking with brewers, or you're talking with people in maintenance, or you're talking with people in like IT or anything like that, people in sensory stuff, where you can kind of intermingle between departments, and it definitely helps you kind of unwind, and you're not stuck with just your department all day every day.
Boost up your company morale, and you guys can also offer each other ideas.
Exactly. Yeah.
Feed off of that.
Yeah, we'll get questions in the tasting room that the brewers are really the only ones that can answer. So we'll come in here and be like, "Oh, hey, I got this question earlier today. Like, can you explain more to me about that?"
Okay, awesome.
So,
that is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So how well do you dominate on foosball?
Oh, it depends. Some of the brewers are really good. I think they spend a lot of time on it.
Okay. What's this?
So this is going to be our hop cooler.
Wow.
So you can kind of just take a big whiff from right here.
Yeah, it smells like
aroma.
plants.
Yeah, so these boxes right here are going to be those pelletized hops I was showing you.
Is that a bale of hops?
Yeah, so these big white
Wow.
bales are going to be the whole cone, and they're going to be about 200 pounds each. This whole hop cooler is capable of holding anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 pounds of hops at any given time, and that will last us 1 to 3 days, depending on.
Really?
Yeah. So we've got another hop cooler in our lower warehouse it's a lot bigger, that will pull from as needed.
So how many barrels does one bale make?
It depends on the recipe. So if you kind of think of it like baking, it all is going to be a recipe of
More hoppy
Okay,
like gotcha.
IPA is going to have probably more hops, or if you're going to dry hop it, more hops required. But yeah, if you think of it like baking, there's a certain amount of sugar, a certain amount of flour, eggs, like whatever it is.
Okay.
You just kind of follow that recipe, and so it kind of varies from beer to beer. But the reason they
Lock the guy in.
Yeah, the reason they are in a hop cooler is hops are technically a food product, so we have to keep them cooled. And they're also only harvested once a year.
Oh.
So that's why if you saw those ones we were just looking at, they're all dehydrated and like pressed down. But there is something called fresh hop beer. So every year when it's harvested, if you can get the hops off the vine and into the brew within 24 hours of getting cut off the vine, it's considered a fresh hop beer.
Okay, which one do you think tastes better?
Fresh hop beers are pretty flavorful. It's tough because they only come around once a year. But yeah, fresh hop beers are pretty good. If you see, it's usually like towards the end of summer, early fall is when that kind of starts rolling around.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, so that's super fun. But yeah, so get the word from the farm, and then once it's ready, we'll send people up there, get them, harvest them, and then bring them right down and put them into the brew immediately.
Oh, okay.
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Any questions on Shifties? Or?
No, actually, I think you covered it all pretty much.
Yeah.
Everybody's got, it's basically the lounge of the super lounge.
Yeah, you'll catch me here in a few hours.
So who is Harv?
So Harv used to be one of our HVAC guys. He worked for Deschutes for a super, super long time. He retired and then unfortunately has passed away. So now he's got his own little spot up there, right above
The Wall of Fame.
Yeah, exactly. So
rest in peace there, Harv.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm drinking the best beer in the universe.
Yeah, it's always fun to see what new beers are on at Shifty's because once something lows, people kind of have the free reign to kind of take what they want and put whatever's on next and just see what's in the cooler. And go
Okay.
from there.
Those steps remind me of the bicycle pedals.
Right, yeah.
Ones that take out your shin.
Yeah, right into this little valve.
I'm going to set this over here really quick.
Welcome to Hoopman Brew House. So this was part of that 2004 expansion. So the reason it's named Hoopman, same reason as JV. It's from Hoopman, company that we got it from in Germany.
How you guys doing? How you doing?
Oh. Yeah, you can see they're getting some stuff done here.
Look like the happiest workers on the planet.
Yeah, yeah. So we got them from Hoopman because Hoopman, one of the best companies to get brewing equipment from. One of the main reasons is all these tanks and vessels are seamless, and so what that means is we don't want any bacteria, oxygen, anything to get in and taint the beer.
Yeah.
So these are all seamless, but what that also means is that this is how they showed up. So from Germany, got put on a ship, went through Panama Canal, up through Port of Sacramento, onto the 5. Once they got to 97, the road's only 24 feet wide, and I believe this large one's 20 feet wide. So it took a couple nights of road closures and a police escort to finally get it up here.
So when you saw those big old, long cylinder things, saying oversized, you're like, are they shipping a rocket engine? So it's just basically large brewery vats. Oh, look at those people. Those things are huge. Look down. Look down there.
Yeah, so then they were installed and the building was built around them.
Wow.
So,
how many gallons does one of these hold?
Oh, that's a great question. I am not sure. Probably
a lot.
I'm not sure if Jeff even knows that. But we fortunately do have this kind of handy-dandy chart to go off of. This is going to kind of go over the brewing process. So, number one, we've got the mash tun. It's going to be in that back corner right there. So if you see that kind of U-shaped tube behind it, that's where that grain is going to come through.
Okay.
And that's where it gets cracked, and that opens it up to more surface area for sugars, or the starches, and that's what turns into sugars.
Okay.
And that's eventually what the yeast is going to eat to produce the alcohol. And so it gets added with hot water, and we've got these two paddles at the bottom that just churn it up and get it real nice and mixed up. Then all these tanks are connected via pipes underneath, underground. And so it gets pumped over to number 2, the water tun, the super wide one. So one of the reasons it's super wide is we just want more surface area for this false bottom here so that we can separate the spent grain from the liquid. That liquid is called wort. It's not quite beer yet. A lot of people like to refer to it as like a sweet barley tea. Yeah, that's where that gets separated out, and just having it be wider, more surface area, so it can get separated a little bit easier. Then it gets pumped over to number 3, the pre-run tank, which is going to be right back here. Not a necessary part of the brewing process. However, it allows us to kind of just stack a beer there, so we can start working on other brews.
Okay.
In case the kettle was still working on another beer. It's just basically a holding tank so that we can do more beers in a day than instead of having to just wait until that kettle's open. But then it gets pumped into the kettle, which is this one right here below us. And this is where the boil occurs. And so this is where a lot of hops are added. If you add hops at the beginning of the boil, it's going to be in there the whole time. It's going to boil off a lot of that flavor, a lot of that aroma, leaving you with primarily bitterness. If you add the hops in kind of in the middle stage of the boil, you're going to get mostly flavor from that. If you add it in right towards the end of the boil, you're getting almost just aroma from the hops.
Okay.
So part of that recipe we were talking about is also not only how many hop or how much hops to add, but when you're adding them throughout the brew.
Oh, okay.
Throughout the boil, rather. Then it gets pumped over to the hop strainer, number 5 right there.
That right there.
And that one is another one that has a false bottom, similar to the water tun, where we can then separate the wort from the hops. Just helps get rid of some of that extra plant material. And then from there, it'll get transferred into the whirlpool, that back left corner over there. And so that's where the wort basically spins around super fast and gets any more kind of particles, leftover grain, plant material, anything like that to try and clear it up as much as possible before we send it over to the cellar for fermentation.
Awesome.
Yeah, a couple of things I do like to know, at least in terms of sustainability. So like our spent grain and spent hops, well, I actually have partnered with a couple different companies who will come pick it up, take it, and they'll use it as fertilizer, feed it to livestock, stuff like that. And then if you look
Happy cows and pigs.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And then this kettle right here, you'll notice that this pipe is the only one that doesn't go up out of the ceiling like all the rest of them.
Oh, yeah, I noticed that. I just noticed that.
So that one actually, we use the heat from the boil and repurpose that heat to then heat the pre-run tank. And keep it at temperature. So.
Oh, neato.
Yeah, so just trying to, be as sustainable and responsible as possible. Another kind of cool thing, you're saying how the brewers, look like some pretty happy workers. I think one thing about that is all these tanks are anywhere from 3 to 6 feet underground as well. The reason we did that is if you see these hatches that they have to access, if they were all above ground, they would have to be getting up on ladders or stairs or something like that. So this is just super easy for them.
Yeah, so if someone was afraid of heights, they wouldn't be a good brewer at a point.
Yeah, so, but another cool thing I like about Hoopman is it's a self-cleaning system. So the brewers only once a week have to get in to do preventative maintenance and a deep clean. Which is super nice for them.
Now, I got some friends of mine who are Australian, and they love Vegemite.
Yeah.
And for the people who don't know, Vegemite is the goo they come on. Really sucks when I'm trying to do this for concerts. Okay, but yeah, so my friends like Vegemite, scrape from the beer barrels, but I don't know which one would that come from.
I believe it's at the end of fermentation. There's this thing called trub, and it's all that leftover kind of like once the beer kind of settles out. It's called trub, Trub, I believe, and that's what is made into Vegemite.
Oh, okay.
Or part of what is made.
Yeah, my friends keep trying to get it. You gotta try it. It's really good. And I'm like, I watched shows where people Australians just give tourists Vegemite, and they're just like running for the hills like that is not good. And they're like, it's like mayonnaise. I'm like, okay, then you eat peanut butter. They're like, no way, that stuff looks gross.
Yeah, I've tried Vegemite. Not my thing personally.
Okay.
Any questions on Hoopman before we move into?
So how do they actually make those seamless? Is it like in one gigantic mold they do, or is it just punctured and just pushed through a metal form?
That is a great question. We'll have to check in the tasting room when we get back, but I know that, the reason we went with them is because they are seamless. Again, just prevents any bacteria, oxygen, anything getting in.
Yeah, because I literally don't see any welding anywhere.
Yeah.
The only connections I see are where the tube goes to the vat, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
And is the little tiny symbol, is that the Hoopman flag?
Where you see?
The heraldry right below 2?
Oh, I believe there is, yeah.
See, I would love to go do a tour of that factory because, half my ancestry is from Germany, and I used to live there when I was a little baby, so it'd be nice to go back and check it out.
Oh, yeah. So this is QA, or quality assurance. This part is kind of the human part of QA, but basically we've got a panel of, or a sensory panel of co-owners that take anywhere from a 6 to 9 month course in order to get fully trained on it. And then once you're fully trained, you can come in and do sensory testing. But basically this is where they'll get, for example, they might get a fresh squeeze that's right off the vessel and then a fresh squeeze that's 30 days old, and just kind of compare them that way. Occasionally they'll do a control and then a spiked they'll spike it with an off flavor, which you can kind of see a flavor wheel right there. So some of them sound kind of gross, like moldy, but some of them sound
sulfury,
nice, like vanilla.
Fragrant.
Vanilla is kind of a good flavor. in a lot of things, but it's not supposed to be in a lot of beers. So
Okay.
basically, what they're trying to do is being able to pick out what those off flavors might be, whether it's spiked or maybe there's just a bad batch. So that's where they have the iPads, but basically they'll turn these little doors around. They've got their samples. They'll take it. The reason these lights are facing upward is they'll put the beer kind of above it, and that shines the light up. You can be able to check the clarity, the color, make sure that's all correct. Swirl it around, take a couple sniffs, and then go ahead and taste it. It's typically a pretty quiet process, and then they've got their iPads there where they'll answer the questions. If for whatever reason someone decides that a beer isn't correct, they have to have a very detailed reason why. They can't just say, oh no, this doesn't taste right. They have to have a super detailed reason why, just to make sure that they're not, we can go back and maybe try and trace
And
back.
that's why you have several people to do it.
Exactly, yeah. Have a detailed reason why, so we can potentially, maybe trace back where the problem might have occurred.
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. But the one thing I think is super cool about the sensory panel is it's open to any co-owner that wants to do it, that wants to do the training.
Nice.
So it can be someone in the tasting room, it can be brewers, it can be someone in maintenance, it can be
Accounting.
it could be accounting, it could be IT, it could be people that work our servers down at the pub. So
Nice.
if anyone wants to sign up and do the training, you just basically go on the co-owner portal. They do it, I believe, once or twice a week. You just put your name down, and you go and you just practice, and then.
So, do any of the brewers come and do this?
I believe there's some brewers on Sensory for sure, yeah. But then they'll have like brewers meetings as well once a month, and then. But yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of different folks from different departments on Sensory, so.
Yeah, see, because I do a lot of artistry, and sometimes I'll just literally make some art and then just go, you know what, that sucks, and throw it away. So I'm just kind of when the brewer's going, I could have did better on that one.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, so that's kind of the human aspect of QA.
Okay.
And we'll kind of move on to
And you guys look to the left and right of us. You got all these cool pictures of all these are all the employees and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's
Awesome.
past events and whatnot.
I like that. Please don't feed the tech labs.
Yeah, so this
Or
is
lab
kind of
techs.
where we do more of the scientific side of things. So this is where we're testing our beer for things like alcohol content and IBUs, which is International Bitterness Units, both of which we have to display on our can. But part of the reason we want to test those is legally we have to be within 0.3% alcohol content of what we're advertising on our cans.
Okay.
And obviously, you don't want to be, advertising a can is 5.5%. It turns out to be 8% or something
Or
like
20%.
that. Exactly.
I only had one beer, officer.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing that I think is also kind of cool is since we are fortunate enough to have this really nice lab here, we'll actually test other breweries' beers for them as well.
Oh, okay.
So-
They're like, hey, can you just double check the alcohol level? And
Yeah, so
Nice.
which is super nice,
So these all little tubes and funnels of all beers.
Yeah, it looks like it. I can't quite see, but yeah, most likely all beer. So
Nice. They've got test tubes in the back, people.
yeah,
And if you want to be a lab monkey, just, check out their website and, look for contact us, careers.
yeah.
They're looking for the best of the best of the best of the best.
A lot of people joke about, if anyone knows any, like scientists or anything that don't want to work for like pharmaceutical companies, you want to work for a brewery, come check
Well,
us out.
my stepson, he's got a chemistry degree, so I'm just like, he's like, but I don't want to be a chemist. So it's like, you could do many jobs where you don't have to be a chemist,
Yeah.
To do chemistry, work
Exactly.
in paint department companies, breweries,
Yeah,
bakeries.
absolutely.
He says like bakeries. It's like, what do you think chemistry is?
Yeah.
I mean, bakeries like the original chemistry.
Right, yeah.
It's just like, so what is all of this?
So if you see FV15, that stands for fermentation vessel 15. So any of the ones that have this conical bottom is going to be a fermentation vessel. But you can kind of see another handy dandy chart up here. So this is where we're getting into fermentation. And this is where we kind of, we're turning that wort or that sweet barley tea into beer. So this is where we'll pitch the yeast, and that yeast starts eating the sugar from the grain, and then the byproducts of that are carbon dioxide and alcohol.
Oh, okay.
So you can kind of see on here, it'll take anywhere from 5 to 12 days for fermentation. Lagers will take a little bit longer, but 5 to 12 days for ales at around 63 degrees. And then from there, it'll get pumped into the centrifuge. That's kind of like the whirlpool in the brewing process. It gets spun super fast, and that kind of helps clear up the beer to where we're looking. Sometimes, depending on the beer, it'll go through the centrifuge multiple times. Sometimes it'll only go through once. And then from there, it'll get pumped into the bright beer tank. So that's where, other stuff will get added in. Dry hopping, any like fruit, mango, or the farm stand fresh mango is mango puree. And the cool thing about the bright tank is, hey, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's where the beer can kind of brighten up a little bit. And then the carbon dioxide is cut off.
I wonder if it's drinkable.
More active or less active, or depending on what part of the fermentation process it's in. So if it's right at the end, it's going to stop bubbling very much at all, and that's when I know you can know that it's all of it.
Oh, it's actually going now. Nice. That's a lot of beer. So who presses your bottle caps?
They get pressed right there in that part.
I mean, who makes them?
Oh, who makes them? That's a good question.
Kind of reminds you of Laverne and Shirley, huh? So now, if one of your crew people saw a glove sitting on one of the bottles, would they get in trouble?
If they saw what?
If they put a glove on a bottle.
Oh, probably, yeah. Probably mess up the whole system.
And how many bottles do you say go through this every minute?
We can do up to 567 a minute, but it's usually running at about 500 to 525.
Okay, what are all those over there?
Those are full bottles that are waiting to get put into cases.
Oh, okay. That's a lot of beer.
Yeah.
Sort of like watching little penguins march. fill the keg.
Yeah. I can find out exactly who once we get back down to the tasting room. Yeah, so the bottling line can do 567 bottles a minute on max speed. Usually it's running around 500 to 525. The canning line can do about 250 a minute, and then the kegs can go, they can fill about a keg a minute. But yeah, something kind of cool difference between bottles and cans. Light is actually can be impart off flavors in beers, so I use brown glass instead of clear glass. And then with the bottles, that nice long neck, once you open it, all those aromas are going to filter right into that neck. So once you open a bottle, you're going to get a really nice aroma. Versus a can, you're not going to get quite as much. But cans are a lot lighter, a lot easier to ship. It's getting more and more popular in the industry. Easier to take hiking or out on the river, stuff like that. So that seems to be a growing trend.
I thought it was a different. I didn't know, but I know that cans are getting more. I just figured it was something that you had perfected.
No, it's just, yeah. I mean, it's funny. So everyone just back in the day, associated canned beer with like light beer, yeah, stuff like that. So bottles was, the be all end all. But the first hazy IPA was actually put into a can because beers weren't supposed to be hazy at the time, and so they said drink from the can right on the label because they didn't want people pouring it out and seeing that it's all hazy and gross, and now it's one of the most popular styles out there.
I prefer the bottles because for some reason, I don't know, it's just like I feel like I kind of taste like metallic flavoring when it get out of a can, but most of my friends like you're just nuts.
Yeah. But this is Jubile Ale Hall of Fame. Are y'all familiar with Jubile Ale at all?
No.
So Jubile Ale is a seasonal release that we do every year.
One of their best beers, I think.
So it was the first seasonal release we did. We did it in 1988 when we started. We were using reclaimed champagne bottles and hand capping them and everything. But in 1995, we started commissioning a local Central Oregon artist to do the artwork for the label. So this is all the original pieces of artwork over the years for all the different labels.
Nice.
Yeah, some of the ones I like to point out are this one is actually a quilt.
Oh yeah.
Which is super cool.
You can get it all the way East Coast.
Jubile?
Yeah.
So we actually had a Roanoke location.
Oh, really?
At one point. Yeah, but so we still own
I know
it,
I've heard of it, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
I live up in mid-Washington, and it's up there.
Oh,
when it comes out, it's just like, and people I know that lived around here or live around here, when Jubile Ale comes out, they'll snatch up cases because it's that good.
Yeah.
And sometimes they kind of gripe at going, you know what, we should form a protest and have them make it all year round. And then my other friends are like, no, because then it won't be special.
Exactly.
What is it? Like, what is the difference in it?
So it's classified as a winter warmer. So there's not actually any spices or anything in it, but it's gonna the rest of the ingredients. It kind of lends itself more towards that a little bit of allspice, nutmeg, some of those classic kind of holiday flavors. But there's not actually any spices in there. But yeah, so it's kind of like not quite like a dark stout or anything, but yeah, a little darker than like an IPA or something like that. But
It's like almost like a cross between a stout and an IPA.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, probably it's more similar to like an amber ale. Would be my quote. Yeah, but a little bit stronger. But yeah, the only parameters that the artists have are it's supposed to encompass a Central Oregon winter. This is another one I like to point out. This one's made out of beeswax. And then you can kind of see on some of them next to it what the label actually looks like, which is pretty cool.
Now, do they get free beer when they get commissioned for that, or do they get a paycheck? Or free beer and a paycheck?
That's a great question. Yeah. I imagine they get some Jubile for sure.
I think I might have to send some towards you guys.
Yeah, so we're actually getting ready to open it up outside of just Central Oregon artists.
I do like that one.
Which is pretty cool.
make the same amount every year, or?
It's definitely scaled up since we started in 1988, but depending on the year, because I know for a lot of our reserve series stuff, we keep like Dissident, we keep at a very like this is how many barrels we're gonna release every year. But with Jubilee, I'm sure we scale it up as needed. This is another one I like to point out. So this artist, she actually cut up a bunch of old Jubilee labels and made like a kind of collage mosaic out of it, which is pretty cool.
Any of the mountains around then?
It doesn't.
Actually, that looks like Broken Top right there.
Yeah, that's Broken Top for sure. That one right there.
Where's Broken Top at?
West.
We'll be able to see it actually. If
It looks like South Sister. During the summertime, it's actually a really good drive to hit the Century highway, and you literally just go from around the mountain, like Mount Bachelor. There's like 6 or 7 lakes that you cruise around in, like Elk Lake. You can go rent like canoes and things to go on, and the Todd Lake is pretty cool looking. It's a small lake, but you know.
Any final questions on Jubilee or for the tour in general?
How many hours a day do you guys run the bottling?
It all depends on like production. So we've got a whole spreadsheet and schedule but the overall facility is 24/6.
Okay.
So yeah, 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. People are here doing something.
Happiest place on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. Sweet. Well, we'll go ahead and head downstairs back to the tasting room.
You close down during the year at all for weeks at a time?
We had to close down for a little bit when we were adding in JV. This is the Jubilee, but yeah. But other than that, it's pretty much just Thanksgiving, Christmas, stuff like that.
I think I looked up on this
I called it 2 aliens playing with a snowball.
It is different.
And then we're gonna head to the left, and there's one last little thing I'd like to point out. So that first section we were in, JV, this is kind of a side view of it. So I was saying there's those 2 floors above and 1 floor below right here. So that's kind of what it looks like. But sweet, well, that pretty much concludes it. We're gonna head back to the tasting room. If anyone needs restrooms, they're gonna be on the left. And then feel free to grab tasters or grab a beer, anything on draft. And then I'll take your badges from you as well. And then you guys get to keep the koozies, so hang on to those. Yeah, absolutely.
Badges? We don't need no badges.
But yeah, we've got a decent amount of those pub exclusives that are brewed on the pilot program. If you guys wanted to taste any of those aren't going to be available anywhere else. So
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. It was great. Yeah, glad you enjoyed it.
And the tasting room. Dun, dun, dun.